Well, Brandi, good to have you here. InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. How long have you been here at the university working with them?
I've been on my current campus for 2 years now.
Okay. And before that?
I was at Reed College and Lewis and Clark College in Portland for 2 years prior to that.
Oh, two colleges. That must have been busy.
It was busy, yeah.
And they were two very different colleges, weren't they?
Yes, very different.
Yeah, they were different planets.
Yes, yes, quite different.
Okay, well, wonderful. And you are a millennial who is very interested in the themes of justice. Tell me a little bit about your concerns and your vision.
Yeah. So I grew up in a church environment that taught me that you just avoid injustice or pain or discomfort in the world to get to some spiritual end. It's like get to heaven when you die, or like pursue the kingdom but avoid all of the bad stuff that exists in the world.
Of course.
And as I began to engage scripture, it felt like there was this other reality that said, don't actually avoid, lean in to those things and see them change. And I think as I engaged scripture around that, I became discontent to live in a reality where you just avoid instead of making a difference, because I don't want to live in a world where I just avoid those things when they could be changed.
Well,
Yeah.
Brandi, where did this change begin for you?
Yeah, so when I entered into college at Willamette University, I had been previously involved with a pretty conservative, a Tea Party conservative community in Southern Oregon.
Right.
And I had never been taught to engage scripture within the social context in which Jesus operated. And so I called myself a Christian and I said I loved the Bible, but I didn't actually know that much about it. And so as I began to engage scripture and see the way that God has a heart for the poor and for the oppressed and worked for ethnic justice in his own time and from the beginning to end of scripture, I felt like I was posed with the question, Brandi, do you actually want to be about what I'm about? And if not, you have to do something about that.
And that's what I like about your generation. You guys, when you grasp something, you want to do something. So what did you want to do, Brandi?
First, I wanted to learn.
Okay,
I realized that I had been living in a reality that was disconnected from what I said I believed. And so I started to try to get educated and gain some knowledge.
Okay.
And I think my journey probably consisted of like learning empathy through hearing people's stories that were different than mine. Activism, actually going and trying things even if I didn't believe in them. And then learning some knowledge and some self-awareness in the midst of that, which I lacked fully when I started my journey.
Wonderful. And what was the breakthrough point for you in terms of really starting in a new direction then out of that study and reflection and all those good things?
I was in that time of prayer and felt like God said, if you want to be about what I'm about, you have to care about the things that I do. And I was like, okay. Apparently racial justice was the thing for me. And so I changed my major immediately. Within about 2 weeks, I had changed from a music performance clarinet major to doing ethnic studies and engaging the church's impact on the way that we see race in the United States, as well as its impact on the industrial prison complex. So some pretty intense connections.
Sure. And so it became very deep and very moving for you.
Yes, and very quickly.
Very quickly. And how did you find expression for that as you moved into it then?
You know, I do a lot of writing. A lot of it came in writing. I realized that I had been so boxed out of resources that could have helped me when I was younger to learn the things that I had learned. And so it felt really important to share with people in a language that they could understand the things that I was learning. So people in my community, and I started to ask the question, how do I help people in the place that I was or the place that I'm still learning to grow from, engage with the issues that I see being important now. And
now at University of Oregon, how are you helping other people who are also millennials or Gen Z, the under 18, the real young ones? How are you helping them come to terms with the reality of the world that they live in from a biblical point of view?
I think mostly through community and scripture.
Okay.
I think there is something deeply significant about engaging with people's stories who are different than your own.
Sure.
And with the homogeneity that exists in the church, most students haven't had to engage or have any cross-cultural interactions.
Sure.
And so in our community, we provide space for hearing stories from perspectives that are not their own. And then when you couple that with a serious engagement with the scriptures, where we apply scripture every week together, transformation happens in community that way.
Could you give me one or two examples so we can get a sense of what that looks like?
Yeah, so after the Super Bowl recently, when all of the stuff with Beyonce, people were really angry and upset. My students, my group of mostly 18 to 20-year-olds, came to our small group community talking about how people in their communities were so upset about what had happened and they didn't understand why. And so we sat down and we watched both of the videos from the Super Bowl and then the video that she put out asking the question, why were people so angry? And so I didn't say like, hey, let's just do some history right now. Let's just do some Black history. I said, actually, how can we empathize with the people who are angry and then ask why, and then do the historical work to say, why is that a problem? And what can we do as a community to make sure that we're not falling into the same kind of problematic responses that people in our community are? So that's one way.
And what came out of that?
So a couple of things have come out of it that have been really fun. One surprising part has been a new willingness to engage with issues for Native folks. Because students recognizing that they didn't understand anything about the Black experience began to ask the question, whose other stories are invisible to me? Whose stories have been not on the table? And so for Native folks, they were like, yeah, we don't know anything about this.
What good questions and what transparency. And do you have one example of somebody that had a wake-up experience?
Yes.
A coming to Jesus time.
Come to Jesus moments. So last year after the shooting of Michael Brown, I had taken some students to engage in a protest, just to have the experience. I didn't know how they were going to respond to it. But afterward, there were some pretty visceral reactions from students who told me that I was anti-cop, anti-white people, and that I was conflating the gospel with politics. And so in that moment, I have this opportunity to respond either defensively or to choose in. And so I said, I will be unapologetic about fighting for the cause of justice in the world, but I actually want to bring you along with me. Like, if you actually want to have a conversation about this, let's have a conversation. And so I set up a day-long multi-ethnic training saying, how do we actually look at a biblical worldview here? And one of the students chose to come and the other one did not. And the one that chose to come, who is deeply committed to scripture and what God has to say, had a come to Jesus moment saying, oh, I hadn't seen this in the entirety of scripture and now I'm seeing it everywhere.
Oh, wonderful.
And so now as a person who's coordinating some of our large group communities and our structures, I see her being more thoughtful about how she engages creating safe spaces for people who are not like white middle class folks to engage with the gospel. And
that must have been very gratifying for you to see that kind of movement, because not a lot of us white folks move very far, very fast. So good on you. Good on you. Thank you for what you're doing at the university and what you're doing in your life and for your journey. You're one of the millennials that give us all hope.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.